My father's flag blew into their yard during a storm. When I asked for it back, he threw it on the ground and said, "That's not real patriotism anyway." I picked it up, went inside, and pulled out a box I swore I'd never touch again. The paper inside the envelope was soft from age, folded twice. My father's handwriting was rough, all caps, like he was always shouting even when he was trying not to. I read the first line, then had to stop. "If you're reading this, then I'm gone." I don't know what I expected. Maybe instructions, or some kind of closure. But it wasn't that. The letter wasn't about me. Not really. He talked about being tired, about seeing things change too fast, about feeling like he'd spent his whole life saluting something that didn't exist anymore. He talked about the war, but not in the way he used to, with pride. This time it was quiet, like regret. He said he'd done things he didn't understand then. That maybe he still didn't. We were told to act like God was watching, but sometimes I think God looked away. I didn't know what to do with that. There were names in the letter. Some I recognized. Men from his unit. One he said he saw die, then later found out hadn't. I reread that part 3 times. I saw him bleed out. I gave his dog tags to his brother. Years later, I got a call. He was alive in a VA hospital in Ohio. Lost his memory. Never came home. I never told anyone. Not even his family. I stared at that line. My chest hurt in a way I didn't understand yet. Then he ended it with a sentence I'll never forget. "I spent my life raising a flag I didn't feel I deserved to salute. But maybe you can." I sat there, the flag still wet in my lap, my hands shaking. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel angry either. I just felt like a stranger in my own house. The man next door had said it wasn't real patriotism. And for the first time, I didn't know if he was wrong. The flag dried on the kitchen counter. I didn't hang it back up. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing that door slam. Kept seeing the way he dropped the flag. Not like someone trying to make a point. Like someone who just didn't care. In the morning, I saw him on his porch drinking coffee. I walked over. Not sure what I was going to say. Not even angry, just heavy with something I hadn't named yet. He looked at me, but didn't say anything. "You were in the service?" I asked. He gave a half smile, like he already knew where this was going. 3 years. Infantry. Afghanistan. Came back with a messed up leg and no medals. I nodded. My dad was Army. Vietnam. He didn't nod back. "A lot of those guys treated us like crap when we got home," he said. I stood there. Yeah, he probably did. Silence. Then he looked up at me, and for the first time his voice wasn't sharp. "It's not about the flag, man. It's about who gets to hide behind it, who gets believed." That hit me harder than I expected. Back inside, I pulled the box out again. Spent hours reading everything. His discharge papers, newspaper clippings, letters from old friends. But one envelope was different. It was addressed to a woman I didn't know. In Texas. I opened it. Inside was a photo of my father and a woman both young. Smiling. Arms around each other. A kid between them, maybe 5 or 6. On the back, in my father's handwriting. "Don't forget him. His name is Daniel." I sat there frozen. That wasn't me. I stared at the name. Daniel. I said it out loud, like hearing it might make it real. It wasn't just the name or the photo. It was the look on my father's face. I'd never seen him look that free, that relaxed, that human. The man in the photo wasn't the same man who raised me. I went back to the letter. Nothing else inside. No address. No date. Just a name and that photo. I took it to the kitchen table and laid it next to the flag, which was now stiff from drying. Side by side, they looked like 2 different lives. And maybe they were. Over the next few days, I couldn't let it go. I called my aunt, my dad's sister. I hadn't spoken to her in a while. Told her I found some things in his old stuff. She was quiet for a second, then said, "You found Daniel." I sat down. "You knew. I didn't think you'd ever find out. Your mom never talked about it, and your dad. Well, He had his ways. What was he? His kid. She sighed. Your dad was stationed in Texas before Vietnam.
He met someone.
It was serious. Then he got called up. He didn't tell anyone about the baby until years later. By then, the mother had remarried. Said it was better if he stayed out of it. So, he just let him go. He wrote letters. Sent money. But he didn't push. And your mom, she didn't want reminders of anything before her. That night I went online and started searching. Daniel plus my dad's last name plus Texas. Facebook. Obituaries. Forums. Anything. Finally I found him. Not a lot of photos. A profile with barely anything on it. But the face was close enough to the photo, I had to know. I sent him a message.
Hi.
I think we might be related. I found a photo of you and my father.
He didn't respond.
Not that night. Not the next. But 3 days later, he replied.
Yeah.
I know who your father was. I've known for a long time. I read that message 3 times before replying. Did he ever reach out to you? Daniel's response came a few minutes later. Not directly. I got birthday cards when I was little. No return address. My mom told me the truth when I turned 18. I never contacted him. Figured if he wanted to know me, he would have tried harder. I didn't know what to say. I typed out half a dozen replies, deleted each one. Finally I settled on. I just found out about you. I didn't know he had another son. His next message was short.
Yeah.
A lot of people didn't. There was no anger in the words. Just distance. Like someone describing a memory that stopped hurting a long time ago. Over the next week, we talked more.
Slowly. Carefully.
He told me about growing up in El Paso. His mom worked nights. He joined the Coast Guard. Got out after 6 years. Now he did custom woodwork and lived in a small town outside Austin. He asked me what her father was like. And I realized I didn't have an answer. He raised me, I said. But I don't know if I ever really knew him. Daniel didn't respond to that. Later that night, I pulled out the box again. I looked through everything one more time, trying to see if I missed a sign, a clue, anything that hinted he was living 2 lives. But there wasn't. My father had walled that part of himself off so completely, it was like it never happened. The flag was still folded on the table. I didn't feel like hanging it up anymore. The next morning, I drove past the neighbor's house.
He was out front again.
Same coffee mug. Same look. I said, "Hey." He nodded. Then I added, "You were right. About the flag. And about people hiding behind it." He looked at me for a long moment, then said, "We all got stories we don't tell." I nodded. Yeah, I just met mine. 2 weeks later, I got in my truck and drove to Texas. I didn't tell anyone I was going. Just packed a small bag, printed the photo, and folded up the flag.
Not to give it to him.
I wasn't sure why I brought it. Maybe just so he could see it once. The thing our father held onto. The thing I thought meant everything, until I found out how much he kept from us. Daniel lived in a quiet neighborhood, older houses with faded fences and overgrown trees. I recognized him right away. He was fixing something on the porch, wearing work gloves, music playing low from a speaker behind him. When he saw me, he didn't look surprised. "You came all this way?" he asked, pulling off a glove. "Yeah," I said. I wanted to see for myself. We stood there for a second, both of us unsure what to say next. "I don't have much from him," he said. "Just this." He went inside and came back with a small, taped-up shoebox. Inside were a few postcards, a photo of a military base, and a dog tag. My father's name. The same one on the folded documents I still had in my closet. "I didn't know what to do with it," Daniel said. "Didn't feel like mine." I pulled the flag out of my bag. Held it out. "I don't know what to do with this either." He looked at it for a long time. Took it carefully. Turned it in his hands. "You know," he said, "I used to think if he'd just shown up one time, everything would have made sense. But now that I'm older, I don't think it ever would have." We sat on his porch for over an hour. Not talking much. Just sitting. Two grown men who should have been brothers but weren't. Not really. Before I left, he handed the flag back. "Keep it," he said. "You are the one he came home to." I wanted to argue, to say it didn't feel like home anymore. But I didn't. When I got back home, I put the flag away. Not in a place of honor. Not on display. Just folded and stored. In the same box where I kept the letter, the photo of Daniel, and all the things that used to feel like answers. I stopped raising the flag in the mornings. At first, I thought I'd feel guilty. Like I was betraying something. But I didn't. I felt quiet. Still. I think that's what I finally understood. All that discipline, that routine, that reverence my father had for symbols, it wasn't really for the country. It was for control. For trying to hold one thing steady when everything else inside him was broken. I didn't blame him for it. But I couldn't carry it the same way. Daniel and I still talk sometimes. It's careful, like walking on old floorboards it might give. But it's something. And maybe that's more than either of us expected. I never told anyone else what I found in that box. Not because I was ashamed, but because I finally realized my father didn't want to be remembered as the man he really was. He wanted to be remembered as the man he tried to be. And maybe that's what the flag really meant to him in the end. I haven't decided yet whether I'll tell Daniel the whole truth. The letter, the regrets, the names. Some days, I think it might help him. Other days, I think it might just make everything heavier. But sometimes, late at night, I pull the letter out again. I run my fingers over the words he wrote. And I whisper one sentence to myself, over and over, like a kind of prayer I'm not sure I believe in. You didn't have to disappear to be gone. Last week, I walked past the porch and saw the empty hook where the flag used to hang. For a second, my hand reached for it like muscle memory. But I stopped myself. Instead, I walked to the fence. The neighbor was out there again, dragging a garbage can down the driveway. I nodded at him. He nodded back. That was it. We didn't need to say anything, because somehow he was part of it too now. Not the story, exactly, but the shift. The crack that made everything start to fall through. I think we all carry pieces of people who never told us the full truth. And maybe we keep carrying them because we're afraid that if we put them down, we'll have to face what they really were. Or maybe we're just afraid of how much of them lives inside us. I don't know, but I haven't raised the flag since that day. And I don't think I will again. Because now, when I think of my father, I don't see a soldier. I see a man standing at the edge of his life, holding a secret so tight it bruised everything he touched. And the thing that breaks me a little, every time, he thought that was the only way to be strong.